That's all right.
Okay. This is now it's live. Peter Bevan-Baker is here with us from the Green Party. He's the Green Party leader of Prince Edward Island for the last three years. 3 years.
Leader for 5 years, actually. Elected MLA for 3. Yeah.
Okay. How did that work?
About 5.5 years ago, the previous leader of the party decided that she didn't want to run again. That was Sharon Latchuk.
Oh,
and so
okay.
the party was looking for somebody else to take over. And I can't actually remember whether it was something I strove to do or somebody poked me to persuade me to do it. But the time was right. You know, my kids were all grown up at that point, and because being a leader is a different step. You know, it's a different level of commitment.
For sure.
And not that I knew it at the time, Jason, but I had a sense that all of my previous runs to get elected, the futility of that might actually end if I was the leader, because you get a lot, you know, politics is so leader-centric and leader-driven, not just here in PEI, but everywhere.
Right.
So, for better or worse, once you become the leader, you're the center of attention, and you're doing interviews, and you're doing all of the media stuff. Right. So as long as you don't screw up, that's great. You know, you have this platform that you didn't have before as just a regular candidate. And I knew that, combined with a bunch of other things, could have brought about a situation where it was possible I would get elected, but it was still a long shot.
Yeah. So take us back now through your first run.
Yeah.
What year was that?
1993. You probably weren't
really?
even born then.
Oh,
Jay.
I was born in 74. 93, and that was in Ontario.
That was in, the riding was called Leeds-Grenville.
Okay.
And it was a federal election. And I tried really hard not to be the candidate. I asked I was the one that got the group going, the Green Party riding going there, the association.
Oh, really?
And asked everybody I knew if they would consider running, and none of them would, for, you know, perfectly good reasons. So by default, I became the reluctant candidate. Right. I had young kids. I mean, I had a very, very full life. And the thought of, you know, putting all of the extra hours required to run in a campaign was not really attractive to me. And I didn't know if I was suited to politics anyway. I cared about my kids' future. That's what got me into politics in the first place. But I had no desire to run as a candidate, no ambitions to be a politician. I had a very lovely life doing something else.
So what was the change there?
Well, again, it was by default the first time.
Okay.
Because I asked everybody who wouldn't do it. Oh, okay, well, I'll put my name down. And this was back, I mean, we're going back over 25 years now. The Green Party was still very much in its infancy. People didn't know really what it was about at all.
And I don't know if they still know what it is.
That's a good point. You know, even though a quarter of a century later, I sit here as an elected Green MLA, in some people's minds, the Green Party is still a single issue environmental advocacy group.
Much so.
But we've come a long way since then. So that first campaign, I was the reluctant politician. In many respects, I still am, actually. But I found I liked it, and I was good at it. I've always been a good public speaker and a comfortable public speaker. And I also do my homework. You know, I read up on all the issues, so I knew what I was talking about, and I was comfortable in debate. And I found that I was actually more suited to it than I ever imagined I would be. So that led to the second and third and fourth.
So you were defeated how many times?
9.
9 times?
Yeah.
So what?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I suppose a couple of things. A belief that the Green Party was the right vehicle to make the changes in society that I think and still think need to be done to create a sustainable future for my kids and your kids and everybody else who's watching kids or listening. There was a belief in that. And also, I'm a pretty resilient guy. It takes a lot to beat me down, Jason. So even though I lost, and I had no expectations of winning, let me be clear about that. I knew going into every single one of those campaigns, apart from the last one, that I had no chance of getting elected. And my job was to lay the groundwork for the next generation of Green candidates. At least that's what I thought at the time, never imagining that someday I would actually be sitting in the legislature as an MLA. Never imagined that.
And you were a dentist.
Yep.
So what was that like? You had to go through medical school.
Yeah.
Where did you train?
I trained in Glasgow, in Scotland.
In Scotland.
Yeah, that's where I grew up. I was born up in the Highlands.
In Aberdeen.
Grew up, yeah, that's right. And then moved even further north of Inverness. Had a very charmed childhood. And by that, I don't mean that I grew up in a wealthy house. I did not at all. But I had loving parents who were kind and thoughtful and decent. And you know, having met many people who weren't in that fortunate position, and you don't realize, you don't appreciate it at the time how precious and how important that is. But it sort of boosted me into this world without any enormous hang-ups or problems or baggage that I had to carry around with me and overcome in my later years. And again, I take all that for granted, but I don't now. And it sort of allowed me the freedom and again, I was a very, very charmed man, a very lucky man in so many ways, that I was given the opportunity to do what I'm doing now.
Oh, good. So, how old were you when you decided to become a dentist?
You know, back then in Scotland, I was 17 when I left high school. I didn't have great grades, Jason.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was kind of lazy, and I wasn't studious. And I sort of scraped through a bunch of stuff, but somehow I ended up with good enough marks to get me into, well, I went into dental school, but I had a number of choices open to me. And dentistry was not my first choice by any stretch. I sort of, like so many things in my life, it was a happy accident. So sort of unplanned bit of loveliness that came my way. And the job suited me really well. I almost did it in the present tense there, so I'm quite got used to the fact that I no longer do it. I've always been good with my hands. I like being with people. I can have a calming influence on people, not always, but I found that aspect of the job came naturally to me, and I loved it. And it was the sort of profession where I didn't have to work 60 or 70 hours a week. I worked. I had a great balance in my life. I didn't have a busy office. I always had a small, like, rural, bread and butter dental office, but I could make enough money to work 4 days a week, be with my kids, like be a very present dad. And so it was a lovely job, and it was a lot to give up. And I loved it. I loved my job.
Is that right?
Yeah, but I love this job too. Very different, but I love them both in different ways.
Much more on the road. Seeing so many different people as a politician, how many challenges you have to face, how many people want something from you. I mean, that must be challenging.
Yeah, I mean, that's an aspect to the job, Jason, but I established really early on after I got elected. I mean, I didn't come the easy way to politics. I mean, running for the Green Party is not the fast track to success in politics. And I made it clear after I got elected that I chose that route because I wanted to do politics differently, and I didn't. When people, and I got those calls, absolutely, I got those calls. You know, can you find me a job? Can you pave my road? And I made it really clear at the beginning I would help them appropriately. I'll put you in touch with the right people or the right department or whatever to fulfill my duty, as an MLA, to help people appropriately. And I will look at your road, and if it looks like it's in need of repair, I will pass that on to the department and let them make that decision. But I distanced myself from that sort of traditional role of the MLA of being the conduit for cookies out of the cookie jar.
Right. Yeah.
And some people reacted badly to that, but it's protected me to this day. I mean, I almost never get calls like that anymore. And I want to be clear, I don't. It's not that I don't want to look after my constituents. I do. I spend a ton of time on constituency issues, but I do it in my own particular way, and I'm not interested in that in the patronage aspect of politics. It really grates with me.
And how many people do you represent in your riding?
There are, in terms of constituents, about 6,000, 5,000 voters. Although that's going to change, the boundaries change soon, so for the next election, so I think my numbers go down slightly, but it's about that.
Okay. So
let me say though,
yes.
as the leader of the party, I feel that I represent 153,000 people,
right.
and that's one of the
right.
big differences between being a district, a constituency MLA, and being the leader of a party. That you have these extra responsibilities that I welcome, but so in a sense, I feel like I represent the whole island,
and it's on your shoulders to build this party up, to get the people, the candidates, to come and join your party. How's that been?
It's been tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. It's difficult to build a party from the ground up. I mean, essentially, when I got elected, there was almost no Green Party. I mean, our membership was perhaps not in single digits, but close to that. I mean, that's where we were. We mounted an amazing campaign to get me elected in 2015, and sort of pooled all of our available resources and brought people in and new people in, and made that happen. But it's not easy to grow something as complicated, as multifaceted, I mean, it was a task. But I have to say, sorry.
Well, and to change people's minds, to try, like I said before, to try to get the message out of what the Green Party actually stands for. Because I think we said as a joke sometime before, people still think you're kind of a tree hugging, everything is for the environment kind of party. Is that what they started out as?
Yes, it was always more than that, Jason. I mean, the origins of the Green Party are in Europe, and Germany specifically. The first elected Greens were there, and they sort of arose from, yes, the environmental movement, but also the social justice movement, the labor movement, the peace movement, all of those social movements that were bubbling up in the 60s and 70s. And they sort of found a political voice through the Green Party. So it was an interesting mix of, again, environmentalism, social justice, of the labor movement, and of the peace movement, and they remain to this day the sort of the foundations of the value system that the Green Party is built on everywhere, not just on PEI in Canada, but the Green Party of Italy, of Australia, of Senegal, wherever you are. All the Green Parties share those foundations.
They share the foundations. Do they share anything else?
Not really. I mean, a goal to maintain a habitable planet for future generations. That's really what drives them. So in that respect, I suppose environmentalism is at the core. But so many of the environmental challenges that we face today are environmental symptoms of other problems, of economic problems, of social problems. And if you try and fix just the environmental problems, you're really just putting a Band-Aid on something which is much deeper than that. So yes, the environment is very important, and we must preserve the land and the water and the air. We're not doing a real great job of that. Things are getting progressively worse. But many of the problems that we're having with the land, water, and air come from bad decisions that we make economically in all sorts of different areas. So, yeah, environmentalism, absolutely, but far more than that. It's always been more than that. And it's been a challenge for me in the last 3 years, one of many challenges, to overcome that misconception or that prejudice about the party. And I feel like we're largely past that here, Jason. I don't get a lot of people asking me or presuming that I'm just a tree-hugging, Birkenstock wearing, blah, 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 vegan. And nothing wrong with any of that. By the way, I would advise people to hug a tree on a regular basis. It's really grounding. But, it's there's more to it than that.
So your transition from Scotland, what brought you to Canada?
I just finished my dental degree. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I'd been offered a teaching position in the dental hospital, which was a very prestigious thing to be. Only asked a couple of people from each year to stay on, and you were sort of being groomed to be the professors of the place down the road in Glasgow, in Scotland. But I didn't want to spend the rest of my life with my head in books studying. I got into dentistry because I loved working with my hands, and I could see this sort of career path opening up where, and not that I don't enjoy teaching, I love teaching in some respects. Politics is about communicating and educating. But it's not what I wanted then. So I was offered a position in Newfoundland for 2 years, a finite period, come out for 2 years, look after this guy's office who was going back to do orthodontics, the braces. Okay. And he needed somebody to look after his office. And this was in rural Newfoundland. They couldn't get a Canadian dentist to come. So a friend of mine at the school I was teaching in the dental school, knew the guy in Newfoundland, and he said, Peter, how about you do that? And I thought, that's a great adventure. Newfoundland, that sounds like a lovely exotic place. I'd love to go there. Yeah. And I went there, met Anne very quickly, the lady who's now my wife. Right. You're Newfoundland.
I'm Newfoundland, yeah.
So you know how wonderful Newfoundlanders are, and she'll hate me for saying this live on air, but she remains to this day the kindest person I've ever met. She's extraordinary, and I wouldn't have done what I have. I wouldn't be the person I am, and I certainly would not have pursued the political career I am now without her full sort of undiluted support.
Did you kiss the cod?
I did kiss the cod, and I drank the screech.
You screeched in. You're a Newfoundland.
Yeah. Newfie. One of my kids is a Newfoundland, like a true-born Newfoundland.
Oh, is that right?
As they say.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
Kate, the oldest, is 29, and the youngest, Dan, is 24. So we have 4 kids within 5 years. So yeah, a bit of a blur. Of a blur from 1990 on to today, actually.
So you had 2 years in Newfoundland?
4.
4 years in Newfoundland. Yeah. Then you transferred to
Ontario. Yeah. And that was mainly because of the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
RDF.
Why, that's why I love this place.
Yeah, right. That was the main reason. I mean, we certainly could have stayed in Newfoundland, and Anne's heart was and still is there to a certain extent. I imagine that's true for you too. It's a special place.
Definitely. I was back there this summer actually to see where my mother grew up, and it's a ghost town now. There's 40 people living on the Little Bay Islands.
Oh yeah, I know Little Bay Island. Sure, yeah, indeed. Because Lewisport was one of the places where we lived, so not far from there.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, she grew up there, and at the time, of course, it was a thriving fishing community. There was one huge fish plant that everybody was employed by the fish plant, and it's since gone downhill. It's closed. It's rotten away. It's a whole generation of way of life is gone up there now. So it was kind of sad to go back there and see everything changing so bad. Now I grew up in Conception Bay South, so that was always kind of a growing community. And at one point there, about 20 years ago, it was the fastest growing community I think in Canada.
Wow. Yeah,
a lot of the outports were closing down, and people were moving into.
Well, I've driven through there not so long ago, and I can believe that. I mean, it's unrecognizable to what it was when I lived there 30 years ago.
Right. So where were you?
We were in Lewisport for 2 years, and then in Port Saunders, which is on the northern peninsula, up near St. Anthony, just south of St. Anthony.
I've been up there.
A beautiful, beautiful stark open land. We were north of Grossmorn, but spent a lot of time walking and hiking, doing stuff in Grossmorn.
So is that the kind of thing that you did in Glasgow?
Yeah, not Glasgow itself, being a big city, but I used to love, when I grew up in the Highlands, I used to love on a Friday night or a Saturday, taking off with my dog, backpack on, just enough food and water to get us through the weekend, and I just head up into the hills with a tent, and I love that. I love despite the fact that the nature of this job means that you have to be social and you have to be around people, and I don't mind that at all. I'm actually quite a gregarious type of guy. That comes very naturally to me, but I love my solitude, and I still do, and I take time to make sure that I have those quiet moments by myself, and that sort of keeps me balanced.
How do you do that?
I run. Okay. And I go for long walks on the beach. I live in Hampton, so beautiful beach there. And at this time of year, you can have it to yourself, basically. Right. Yeah. And I love walking in the woods as well. There's some woods not far from where we live. And so, yeah, I either when I'm running or when I'm walking, that's when I have my quiet time.
Are your summers pretty much to yourself as an MLA? Or?
No.
No. You're through summer?
No.
Okay.
No, one of the challenges of the job, Jason, is that there are endless demands on your time. And if you're like me, and I'm the sort of person that likes to please people,
right,
that I find it really hard to say no when I'm invited to something. I've learned to do that out of necessity. I've had to, because I have just too many things to do. But summers are busy. I mean, it's a different kind of busy, and it's in many ways it's lovely. You know, you're doing the strawberry social circuit, and you're going to events in your district, and again, for me, it's tip to tip on the island. So, they're busy, but it's lovely. People, for the most part, are happy to see you, want to talk to you, and I have so few conversations that are not pleasant and civil and positive. I mean, I could count in one hand, in the 3 years, the awkward or the difficult or the uncomfortable conversations I've had with Islanders. People are kind.
I would tend to say the same.
Yeah.
I have a friend who was aligned with the PC party, and I was asking him. He was running for an MLA down in Montague, and I asked him about the door knocking, and he said, that was probably one of the best things about the campaign run. I said, really? Going door to door? Because I think I would hate it. I think that would be the worst part of campaigning, going up to somebody's driveway, not knowing if there's a dog in the drive, at home, not knowing how that person is going to react to you. How did you find that experience?
Well, exactly like you, I hated it to start with. Or I dreaded it. I shouldn't say I hated it. I dreaded the thought of it. And the reason for that, Jason, partly the unknown that you just described so well there, but also I'm not somebody who's good at thrusting myself on another person. I'm very happy to meet you and shake your hand and have a great conversation, but I'm not good at forcing myself on people. And I had this idea that knocking on somebody's door was a sort of it wasn't a voluntary conversation at that point. You were the one that was creating it. And I really wasn't comfortable with that. But you know what? I have totally turned around on that. And I now find door knocking the nicest part of politics.
Wow.
I love it. And I love it, again, because Islanders are kind and they're welcoming and they're hospitable and they're engaged. You almost never go to a house where not got no issues. I'm not interested in politics. I mean, that's not the island way,
True.
People are interested in what you're doing, and at least for me, I have had almost entirely and exclusively positive experiences, and I learned something. I mean, if there's one thing about this job that I like more than any other, it's the fact that I have opportunities every day to learn something, and I do. Today was no exception. I learned a pile of stuff today in various ways, and one of the ways I've learned about this island, about Islanders, about politics, about issues. I've learned a lot about myself too. A huge amount about myself, what I was capable of, what I was good at, what I wasn't so good at. But going to people's doors and having really intimate conversations, and it is. If you're listening with curiosity, if you're truly listening to what they have to say, with a will to learn something, I never come away from a house without having discovered something. It might be something very trivial, but so I look at it like that. And I listen intently to people. I don't go to knocking doors. I like your vote. See you later. That's not the sort of interaction that would work on PEI anyway. But people really appreciate if you. By the way, I am the most inefficient door-to-door politician probably on the planet, because I happily go and have a cup of tea and sit down for half an hour, and I've done it. Oh, geez, an hour. But you know what? And I don't look at it in terms of, well, that was worth it. I got their vote. I would have learned something from them. But more importantly, and this I didn't realize this till afterwards. Those people talk. That person that you were speaking to for an hour, they said, "Geez, Peter came into my house, and we talked about whatever it was for an hour, and I really felt that he was truly concerned about it, genuinely listening to me." And so I may not be efficient in terms of doors per hour, but that's not what it's about for me. It's about making contact. Exactly, that's exactly right. Building relationships.
How are the other parties doing in that respect?
I don't know. I've never gone door to door with other, for another party or with another politician from another party. Some of them are really personable people, so I imagine that they too have that sort of attachment, that sort of experience at the doors, but I don't know, Jason.
So, going back to Ontario,
yeah.
What then brought you here?
I mean, I grew up in a little farming and fishing village called Fortrose on the Black Isle in the north of Scotland. And my wife grew up in a fishing village. And she was born in St. John's, but she moved around the province, but almost always, like everybody else, she was coastal. She was next to the water. And so for both of us, that pull of the sea, it never goes away. At least for us, it didn't. And much as we loved Ontario, and we did, I mean, we lived right on the banks of the St. Lawrence, so that's a big river, you know. And the community we were in, it was a rural community. It felt like a small enough place that you could, you know, it felt like a community. Right. It wasn't a Toronto or, you know, something. Not that you can't have a community within Toronto, but it wasn't that it didn't suit us, but that pull of the sea was just relentless. And so when we had I'll tell you what triggered it for me, Jason. It was one day I was in my dental office, and at that point I had owned my own dental office for the first time for a couple of years. And I had wonderful staff, and I loved it. And it had grown quite substantially. It was a little tiny office when I bought it. And this morning, when I was in the office, was standing at the front desk talking to my receptionist, and somebody walked into the office and said hi to the receptionist. They clearly knew each other, and not a new patient, and they didn't know who I was. And it suddenly struck me that my dental office, which had been successful in all kinds of ways that you want to measure that I had lost what I wanted from my workplace, which was those intimate relationships, that those connections. That here was a patient in my office that I didn't even know who the hell they were. And that was a real wake-up call for me that this is, you know, the office was continuing to grow. I could just see this ongoing. There was another dentist in the office. I should explain whom this lady was seeing. And so it was a combination of the pull of the ocean, and it was time for me. Despite the fact that we had real deep roots in that community at that point, we'd been there for over 10 years. The pull of the ocean, and that I want to get back to small. Small is beautiful for me, and so that's why we moved here.
And you were involved in politics at this time.
Yeah, I'd run by that point 4 or 5 times. Can't remember exactly.
4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Boy, you can take a beat.
I can.
Yeah, you're resilient.
Yeah, I am.
And is that something, of course, you have to have in politics, a thick skin?
I think so, Jason. But it's interesting. I was chatting with somebody else recently, and that idea that you have to build this shell around you, this protective coating, to protect yourself from the attacks and the nastiness and the, you know, all of the mean things that happen in politics, and you cannot escape from. At least not now that the Green Party is, you know, an existential threat to the status quo. But I think it's possible to create that protection for yourself without losing that sort of core of humanity, that sensitivity that is still a really big part of who I am.
Right.
And I did, when I got into politics, Jason, I'll just back up a little bit now. When I got elected, I didn't know if I'd be suited to this life at all, because I am a sensitive guy, and I knew that I wouldn't do politics in the conventional way, and I had no idea whether Islanders would react well to that, or whether they would not react at all, or they would dislike me because I didn't look and sound like a regular politician. But I found quite the opposite. That people actually find that quite refreshing. That you are different from what they expect from a politician. And part of that is yes, I've had to learn to protect myself from the vicious, horrible stuff that people say about you. I mean, some of the stuff that people put online about you, you know, on Facebook, and it's hard to read. But I've learned to just sort of let that wash off me, and carry on with my work. You know, focus on the stuff that I enjoy doing and that I feel I can make a positive difference, and try as much as I can to ignore that. It's not easy.
No, it can't be easy.
Yeah.
Do you any kind of a spiritual background?
Not really. Peripherally, yes. My dad was a church organist. That was part of his life. He was a teacher too, but he was a church organist. So I mean, I was in churches, and Anne, my wife, her dad was actually an Anglican minister. So I can certainly thank the church for bringing us together, because it was my trumpet playing and, you know, by invitation from his dad at the church that first introduced me to Anne. So I haven't followed a sort of organized religion in my life. Although, I mean, I go to church not irregularly, but I'm not a member of a church. But I certainly have an appreciation for things that I don't understand, things beyond the visible, things beyond the tangible, which you might call spiritual and higher powers, things I don't understand, and I don't think I can. What motivates me to do what I do? What makes us so different? You know, all of those big questions that nobody seems to have satisfactory answers for. So, yeah.
Do you see this as a time? I sort of see this as a time where a lot of people are asking more questions about that, the bigger questions. What's going on in the economy? What's going on with the ecology? People seem to be really scared in a lot of ways, especially when we look at Trump, what's going on in the States, all the division amongst the states. People, how do what's your take on all of that? And look at the world.
I think we have good reason to be scared, Jason, and one of those is certainly the uprising of intolerance and of divisive politicians and politics. But I think that's just a reflection of our society. I don't blame Donald Trump for what's happening there. I mean, he's not helping matters, but he would not have been elected if a large number of
these were
Americans.
Underlying
Yeah,
issues.
Absolutely. He's resonating with people somehow. I think there is a general malaise, a discontent with people, with the populace generally, Jason, and I think we've lost our way. I think the things that we strive for are not the things that matter. People are told that to be successful, you need to have a bigger house, another car, the newest TV, all of those material possessions. And I'm not suggesting that living in poverty is fun, or it's not.
Right.
But I'm also I am suggesting that striving for material success, assuming that is going to bring you meaning and contentment in your life, is not going to work. And I when I was a dentist, Jason, I used to talk at dental conferences, big dental conferences, and my talk was called The Happy Dentist. And I would talk about how I have structured my dental office in a way that, I make way less money than most dentists, which I did consistently throughout my career, but I derived an enormous amount of pleasure from my job. I loved the work that I did. For the most part, my patients loved me. I had a great staff, and I just had a different set of values. And my message was, if you want to have contentment in your life and live a meaningful existence, you don't need to rush 2 more patients through your office in order to buy the next toy that you have your eye on.
Well, that has to be reflective in the party that you chose to support.
Absolutely.
And those core values, you say that attracted you initially to the party was their work with social justice, the environment, those sorts of things. So what triggered you then? What was the impetus then that said, I want to pursue this as a political goal?
It was having kids. It was looking at the world in a different way. When you have kids, and you look beyond your own lifespan, and you at least I did, and I probably did that now and again, as a younger, more naive, ignorant, more selfish person.
Right.
But when you become a parent, at least for me, one of the big changes was that I could project 100 years from now, because my kids were going to be around then, or maybe not 100 years, 50, 60 years when I'll be gone, but they will likely still be around. what sort of a world are they going to inherit? And the picture that came back, because I've always been interested in global affairs, and I've done a lot of reading on economics and social, all sorts of stuff, and I could foresee a world that it was going to be tough for them to live content, safe, secure, meaningful lives. And I was a very dedicated dad. I think we already talked about that. But I could also see that there was little point in me raising 4 glowing citizens, if they have, if that's what, or at least trying my best to create 4 people who would contribute really positively and in their own unique ways to the world, if the world in which they were going to live was going to turn to rat shit. Like that made no sense to me. So that's what triggered me to get involved in doing my bit to change that collective direction that we were going in, and we make the collective decisions, the big decisions, through politics. So that's why I got into politics.
And what do you see as a future for Canada, PEI? What things can we do now to start changing, or what changes would you like to see happen?
I think we already are making those changes, Jason, and you see that in sometimes very small and apparently insignificant ways. We see charging stations for electric vehicles springing up on PEI, and you may think, oh, well, geez, I don't own an electric vehicle. What's that got to do with me? You see people who are starting to question the sense of that lifestyle choice that I just talked about, that getting in the rat race and running faster and faster and faster,
right?
And realizing that's not bringing me the sense of peace and contentment and meaning that I really want in my life. I see that a lot. I see it in the way that we are changing our farming patterns. A lot of young farmers moving to PEI, particularly young women. That I find that very exciting. Who have made a very definitive choice that I don't want to be part of that conventional life that we're all sort of encouraged to do. So I see lots of little things happening. I have to tell you, I haven't lost hope yet, but I think we have enormous challenges ahead.
And the Green Party's kind of put a hamper on themselves in a way, some shackles, because the way you fund, you talk about that, you only accept so much from government. Business.
Yeah, well, the rules have changed recently on that, Jason. But you're absolutely right. Until just a few months ago, it was possible. Basically, there were no rules. Anybody anywhere in the world could donate as much as they wanted to a political party on Prince Edward Island, and that went for businesses, corporations as well. Now, despite a very vigorous defense of that situation by the Premier just a year or less than a year ago, they changed their minds on that, and they did bring in election finance changes to the legislation, which I've been calling for since I got elected. So now we're all on a level playing field. But yeah, we don't have as much money as the other parties, absolutely. But you know what? That's only one aspect of winning elections. Yes, you need to have resources to get your signs made, to get the flyers, to to buy TV ads if you're going to do that. But we have some much more precious things going for us, I believe, in the authenticity of our candidates, and in the vision of our message, and that doesn't cost anything to get that out. And so I don't know if we're handcuffed, as you put it. There certainly will be restrictions. We aren't going to be able to buy the full page ads in the Guardian that you will see from the Liberal Party for sure. But I'm not sure how much that impresses people anymore. I think they're much more keen to make that connection, to build a relationship with their potential elected representative. And again, that doesn't cost dollars and cents. That's just a bit of time and a bit of care and attention. And I think all of our candidates will be capable of doing that. I should say, I'm not suggesting candidates from other parties are not capable of doing that too. Absolutely they are, and they do. I'm just saying that a lack of money in our instance is not necessarily a huge drawback, I don't believe.
your polls are really good.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
Really good.
They are.
So, what was it, 43%?
Not quite.
Not
Maybe you're predicting the next one, Jason. I don't know, but I think it was 38 in the last one. But, for the first time ever in Canada, a Green Party is at the top of an opinion poll in a province.
Right.
So that's not insignificant.
No,
that's not a small thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's exciting. It's enormously exciting, but it's also quite terrifying to think that the party has gone from basically zero, as I explained a little while ago, to potentially being viewed as the next governing party of this province, and that brings with it, like that reality brings with it new expectations, new responsibilities, both of me individually and of the party collectively, and I hope we can rise to that. I think we have. I think the policies that we have released out into the world in the last little while demonstrate that we are a party that has the capability and the capacity to produce really good policy, and to have a platform for Islanders that will resonate with them and give them a vision of something they want in the next election. How
many candidates have you now for the new election?
We have 16, I think, officially nominated, and there are 27 districts, of course. I think that's considerably more than any of the other parties. We're not finished yet, of course. We will have a full slate of candidates, so we still have 11 people to find. But it's difficult, we don't know when the election's going to be. It could be called tomorrow. Or it might not be called for until the spring of 2020, almost 2 years from now. So to ask somebody to put their life on hold, essentially, and be the nominated candidate for the next, potentially, a year and a half, that's really difficult for people. Yeah. And I know there are a ton of people out there who not only support the party, but actively would consider running as a candidate, but it's just not, they can't commit to that right now. So it could be that when the writ is called, we won't have a full slate, but we will for sure. By the time you have to have all your candidates nominated.
What if you became premier?
I used to laugh heartily when people said that, and but it's not so funny anymore.
It's not so funny. Hannah Bill.
Yeah,
Hannah Bill that was a big thing for you guys. Huge. District 11, and apparently that is a cornerstone. It is.
It's a sort of litmus test, and again, nobody. When I got elected, people said it would take a miracle, it would be impossible, but we did it. When Hannah got elected, they just said it was highly unlikely. So we sort of took that as she was guaranteed to get in. That sounded pretty good to us, but she worked incredibly hard, and our success there was down to a number of things. I think it was 2 years in, I'd sort of established myself as an individual, but also changed people's opinion about the party. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Hannah is a spectacular candidate, incredibly embedded in the community, but also very smart. Worked really hard in that campaign. So we weren't terribly surprised. I mean, we didn't go in thinking we'd win. Don't get me wrong, not at all. But that was a huge step for us. And now here we are, at the top of the poll. So I can't shy away from that. I can't pretend it's not happening, Jason. But I can also tell you that I did not get into politics to fulfill some sort of burning personal ambition to become the premier of a province. That's not what this was about at all. It was about the ideas I represented and the policies that I want to see put in place. And I don't care who puts them in, whether it's the red party or the blue party or the green party, I don't care. I just want to see good policies. So if it's a green government that's elected, fantastic. I will accept that responsibility, I hope, with the seriousness and the grace that position demands. And but I find it difficult to talk about. I have to admit, but it's a reality that I have to live with, and I'm still amazed at the trust that a number of Islanders have in me, that they would consider that, but ready to take it on.
And one of your platforms certainly is the openness, transparency of government. Do you think that could change if you became premier? Are there things that you can't talk about?
Yeah.
That the governments have to keep a little secret?
I mean, there are, yes, absolutely. I mean, there are for security reasons and for personal reasons. There are a very small little spectrum of things that you cannot talk about. But the vast amount of information about governing and the decisions that are made and the policies that are made and the reasons those policies and decisions are implemented can, and I believe should be made available to the public. You asked me if it will change. Absolutely not. I can give you a definitive, unambiguous answer to that. Having said that, I know that governing is difficult. Not because I've tried it, but because I've watched a lot of people, good people with great intentions, realize the restrictions and the challenges of governing. That's not to say that it can't be done in a completely open and transparent and accountable way. I think it can, with those very minor things that we talked about earlier. I think there's room for an enormous amount more openness and transparency in politics, particularly here on Prince Edward Island, without losing sight of what your values and your intentions are. So yeah, you can govern with complete openness. It's much more challenging. The more democratic you make something, the more open you make it, the more difficult it is. The easiest form of governance is a dictatorship. One person doing what she or he wants, and the rest of you have to live with that.
Yeah.
Not good democracy, but easy government. The more democratic you make your government, and the more open you make it, the more challenging it is. But bring on the challenge. The islanders deserve to have true openness and accountability.
So, let's talk about your musical interests. Your the trumpet.
Yep.
And you're into jazz.
I am. Cool. Well, I mean, I play all kinds of music. I was trained classically, I suppose. Played in orchestras, but very early on, I was introduced to jazz and I loved it.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was pretty terrible at it to start with, but you jazz, as with many things, you learn by doing it.
Yeah.
And I'd pick up my horn and blow a solo in the big band that I was learning in. It would be awful, but you'd listen back. Oh, geez, and you'd learn, and so bit by bit, I became decent at it. I'm no longer really much good because I don't practice.
Right.
I just don't have time, Jason.
Yeah.
But so many parts of my life that were really, really important to me when I was younger, I've had to sort of put aside. Music being one of them. Right. Now, not entirely, and I'm actually on Sunday, 2 days from now, I'll be playing at a Remembrance Day service. Okay. Playing the Last Post and Reveille, and that's always a really poignant. It's a hard thing to play because it's so emotional, But I have the chops to do something like that. I couldn't stand up there and play for 2 hours.
Right.
But I can do 2 minutes, and so I'm glad to have that musical outlet. We talked earlier about the solitude, and that's how I recharge. Music is another way that I find balance in my life.
Any grandkids?
One.
Congrats.
Very cute. He's adorable.
Is that right? And here, they're none of them.
No, sadly, in Montreal.
So,
Kate, my daughter, our oldest child's married. She's a musician. She's married to a musician.
Okay.
And their little boy was born about 18 months ago. And Anne and I try and maintain a regular visits, so that we're not strangers. And that, as you might imagine, I was talking earlier about why I got into politics and my children's future, and I mean that's just sort of underscored and highlighted when you have a grandchild, and things have not improved in the 30 years since I started having kids. They've got considerably worse, and so I think the challenges that George's generation will face will be pretty substantial. Just motivates you to keep going.
Well, which reminds me, I was going to bring this up in the recent climate survey.
Yeah, IPCC report.
IPCC report. It looks pretty bad, pretty grim, and if we don't start to turn back things now, that was 30 by 2030.
Yeah, we have a window of about 10 or 12 years, according to the latest report. Now, this was, I can't remember which report it is, but there have been reports suggesting that we're heading down a dangerous road for a long time, like 30 or 40 years. But with each report, that window of opportunity to change our ways shrinks, and we're now down to a decade or so. In fact, it may even be less than that. Just yesterday, there was a report issued on the oceans, the health of the oceans, and that IPCC report that you're referring to. All of the numbers and the projections from that report were based on a different set of criteria related to the oceans. How much? Okay. Well, I'm getting a little technical here. Anyway, the short story is things are actually worse than the IPCC report suggests. So that 10 years may be actually an optimistic window. So we've got to make some changes fast and profound changes. And it's not that we're gonna, it's not that you can't enjoy a hot shower and a cold beer. It's not like, it's not that we have to stop. We have to abandon all of the luxuries and the things that we've grown accustomed to. Some of them we may have to change, and we may have to stop building 5,000 square foot houses for two people. Right. But we can do it. We can do it. I mean, if there's one thing that gives me hope for the future, it's the sort of endless capacity for human beings to be creative and to be thoughtful and to be kind. I think at our core, we are kind, generous people who want to take care of each other. And I think once enough people recognize that what we're doing now is not what we want for the next generation, things will change.
Is the message getting through to people?
Not fast enough. I mean, you will have seen the fight that's going on now here in our province about implementing something as simple as a carbon tax or carbon pricing. Couple of cents, that's all it is on a litre of gas, and you know how that fluctuates every month anyway. According to some politicians, the sky is falling and the world is coming to an end because we're suggesting that we pay an appropriate price for something that's creating pollution.
Well, for me, my wife and I talk about this carbon tax. Our biggest concern is how is that money going to be distributed to decrease the amount of carbon that's being released in the atmosphere? If we could see an example of where that money is going to go, if, for example, they gave every home a $2,000 rebate on heat pumps, then you can say, okay, well, that money is definitely going directly into decreasing carbon emissions. And I think that's the real problem people have when I talk to people is, okay, you take our money, how is this going to decrease the carbon emissions?
And it's a very valid concern. It's a valid concern for a number of reasons. Firstly, a lot of people in PEI are living close to the edge, paycheck to paycheck. So the suggestion that you're going to be paying more to heat your home, to put gas in your car, is just, we can't cope with this. It's just, it's going to put us over the edge. And I am not unaware of that reality for thousands and thousands of islanders. And I don't want to get too wonky down into the weeds here, Jason, but the plan that we presented, the carbon tax plan, there's a lot of, we can't call it a tax, or we can't call it, we've got to call it a price. I don't care what you call it. What it's designed to do, the reason that you increase the cost of pollution or things that pollute, which is burning fossil fuels, digging stuff out of the ground and then setting fire to it, creating problems for our atmosphere. The reason you put a price on that is to dissuade people and to try and nudge them towards cleaner, better alternatives. Now, putting a price on carbon is only a part of it. That's a tiny part, actually, not an insignificant, and it's a central part, but it's not the only thing that we have to do. We absolutely have to provide incentives and rebates to people to put heat pumps in, to have a hybrid vehicle or an electric vehicle, or to establish better public transportation, or car sharing apps that make it possible. Because we want people to be mobile, we want people to be able to get around and to enjoy all of the conveniences of having your car. We just can't do that and continue to pump carbon into the atmosphere that's going to make a climate that will make this planet inhospitable for our children. As a responsible adult, and never mind politician, but as a responsible citizen of this planet, I can't be a part of that. And there are various ways that we can do that. We can do it, I believe we can do it in a way that protects those vulnerable people who cannot afford any more taxes on their backs. And our plan would have done that. Our plan is not going to be implemented now because the government has has negotiated a far worse deal, but I don't want to get into the politics of that. But we can do it. We can be creative. We can do this in a way that does not harm people, but that protects the atmosphere and makes those profound changes that we need to take, we have to take, if we're going to not go past that tipping point where goodness knows what would happen.
And solar panels are a big issue. Tesla, he's coming out with the shingles.
Yeah.
Your whole home can be...
Yeah, Elon Musk has a habit of jumping the gun sometimes on some of his technology, and there's a price point there that makes them just not affordable for some people. I mean, I love what he does. There's an example of a creative mind, if ever there was one, like fearless, thinking outside the box. But we're not going to save the world by reshingling our houses with Tesla's little tiny solar panels. Again, that's not what this is about. It's part of it. I think if I had to drill down and find out what the source of the problem is, Jason, it's the idea that we can have a continuously growing economy on a finite planet. The Earth is a certain size.
Right.
We have a growing number of people, and we're pushing 8 billion now. We're well past 7 billion. When I was born, it was almost half of that. So we've had an enormous increase in the number of people. Plus, all of those people have an expectation to live at a certain level of comfort. Right. And so we have more people demanding more stuff. And at some point, we're going to approach the limits of this planet, whether it's to supply us with wood or fish or minerals, or whether the oceans and the atmosphere are able to absorb the wastes from our economic system. And that's what climate change is. Right. That's a signal that the atmosphere that surrounds our planet has been changed. The chemistry of that atmosphere has been changed by human behavior to the point where it's becoming unstable. We've lived through an incredibly stable period of climate for the last few thousand years. Looks like that's coming to an end, and we're the ones that brought it to an end, and that's hugely problematic.
Now that's another point, though, that a lot of people are still climate change deniers to a point that say that maybe it isn't humans that are doing it, that it's just a natural cycle.
Not many, Jason, and you'll find an incredible unanimity amongst the scientific community, the people who understand this better than anybody else, in the high 90 percentile, 97% or something of climate scientists believe that climate change is real and that it's caused by human activity. Slightly more in the general populace, but not very many. I was looking at a poll the other day about carbon pricing actually in Canada, and there was only like 6% of people who believe that climate change is not real. So it's a very small number actually. People accept. I mean, you only have to have lived through the last couple of years of weather that we've had here on PEI and watch what's happening globally. It's hard to deny in individual weather events what's going on, but the statistics are undeniable. So there's actually very few people who deny that it's real. The new deniers are the climate action deniers who say, oh yeah, this is a problem, but we can wait for a little while, or let's do something else, or it's somebody else's problem. We only here we're a little tiny island, PEI. Canada only produces 2% of the global emissions. So, why is it our problem? Somebody else has to do it. So any number of excuses not to actually bring forward action that will make it
but if we are going to start to move forward and make these plans and make these cuts, the whole world has to get on board. Every country has to lower their emissions as well. So we could see where people would say, well, look what China's doing. Why should I have to pay more and do our part when they're not doing their part? So you can see this, and how could we mitigate that?
Well, there's a few things about that. China is changing. I mean, they're putting up more solar panels than you. I should know the statistics on that, Jason, but I don't. Unbelievable amounts of solar panels going up there. Now they still have. I mean, with the population that they have, of course, they have the biggest carbon footprint of any single nation on the earth. But they recognize that there's a problem, and they are shifting far quicker than we are here in North America. By the way, far quicker. So that's one aspect. Other people are changing their ways, not again, there are some nations that are doing a much better job than others. Here in Canada, yes, we only produce slightly less than 2% of the global emissions. You may think, well, geez, even if we become carbon neutral tomorrow, 2% of the emissions, that's not going to make any difference. But that's not true at all. We are, let's imagine if you said, I'm not going to pay my income tax this year, I'm only one person, geez, the government can do without my money. If everybody adopted that attitude, the government would cease to function. We wouldn't have all of the things that we rely on. So everybody has to accept their responsibility, regardless of how small your contribution is. 2% is not small, and on top of that, Canadians produce 3 times what the average global citizen does in terms of emissions. So we have a moral responsibility. We built our economy, and we have created the luxury, the relative luxury that we have here by burning carbon fuel. So we need to take that responsibility. And just to finish this thought, Jason, here on PEI, I mean, we're the smallest province in a country that's only producing 2%. So you could quite validly say, nobody would even notice if we stopped burning fossil fuels tomorrow. Right. But we are an island that is, without doubt, the most vulnerable province in Canada to the effects of climate change. Right. And we need to be an inspiration to the rest of the country and the rest of the world that we can do this. And there are small island states that have taken the lead and are completely carbon neutral now.
Is that right?
Yeah, several of them. And Tuvalu, Sri Lanka, and Ceylon used to be. There's a number of them around the world that are climate leaders because they recognize that they are the most vulnerable. And here on PEI, all of our big industries, farming, fishing, and tourism, are all dependent on a stable climate. So, if we don't smarten up, we're going to create some not just environmental problems, but economic issues.
And these independent islands, what are they doing for their alternative
power? They have entirely switched to renewable energies, whether that's solar or hydro in some cases, or a combination. I mean, it's very rare that a country or a jurisdiction can meet all of its energy needs with one source. You usually have a mixture. Here on PEI, wind is the thing that we have invested in because it's appropriate here, but it's intermittent, and we need to balance that with solar. We really have an enormous potential to expand solar here, but we do not have a government that has done anything to incentivize islanders to move that way. In fact, there are things in place that make it unattractive for people to put solar panels on their houses. We have to change that.
We're up against a giant. The whole gas industry, oil and gas industry, the whole world is dependent on it. How do we attack that?
Okay. The whole world is not dependent on oil and gas. The whole world is dependent on energy. We need energy to transport things. We need energy to transmit the messages we are now and to build the stuff that we have. But that energy does not have to come from oil and gas. Absolutely, the huge economic boom of the Industrial Revolution has been built on the use of fossil fuels, almost entirely. But that doesn't mean that we cannot continue to make progress and to live well on this planet using energy from other sources. Again, I come back to the ingenuity of the human being. Yes, we are dependent on energy, but we're not dependent on fossil fuels, and we can get off them. In fact, we have to get off them if we want to maintain our presence on the planet.
So this transition, we're at a sticky transition here in between, and well, people will be scared. I mean, look at the guys who go out west. They work on the oil fields in Alberta. I mean, it supplies so many jobs. Would you I know you want to see a growth in economy, but how would we transfer those livings into another way of life? What would they do? I guess our whole mechanism is so entwined with oil and gas, I guess, is where we're going. How do we suddenly just say, pull the plug on that?
Okay, well, you don't do it suddenly. Although a window of 10 years is pretty sudden, for sure, and it's not 10 years that we have to be off fossil fuels entirely. It's 10 years that we have to start making those incredibly profound policy and individual lifestyle choices. We have to reduce our emissions by 50% by 2030 and be carbon neutral by 2050 is what is what the IPCC is saying. So it's pretty sudden, but it's not that we have to unplug ourselves from it right now, today. And we couldn't do that. Society would cease to function.
Right.
What are those people going to do? There are far more jobs in green energy than there are in oil and gas. For every job per unit of production of oil and gas, there are 7 jobs in renewable energy. So, because it's a much more hands-on thing, you don't, when you put an oil rig up and you suck oil out of the ground or tar sands or whatever it is, you don't need an awful lot of guys to do that. You need some, but when you're building solar panels, installing solar panels, when you're monitoring, when you're looking after all of the infrastructure, and building what's called a decentralized grid, where you have lots of energy sources feeding into the grid, that's a far more job-intensive thing. So actually there's all kinds of work to be done, and we're talking just about the energy field, but a green future, a clean economy future would have all kinds of jobs available to it. Different kinds of jobs, but we need different. We need to change.
So there are examples in Germany, I believe, small villages that have gone totally, or at least 80%.
Yeah, there are many. And when I talked about the small island states, and I think I gave you the wrong names for some of them, but there are a number of really inspirational jurisdictions out there who have done it.
So how do you get your message across?
Well, day by day, one-on-one conversations, and I'm really hopeful, Jason. We still have time, but that sort of awesome, and that word is overused these days, but the truly awesome responsibility that our generation is faced with is making that transition, making the choice first of all, and then putting in place all of the practical things that will bring about that change. And it's up to us to do that.
Have you started campaigning your candidates yet in any sort of?
Yeah, a lot of candidates. I met with one of them today who does door to door on a regular basis. Yeah, she's out, I don't think every day, but going around her district, just introducing herself and getting to know what the issues are in her area and letting people know that she's going to be the candidate in the next election.
Will this report be involved in your
yeah, but we have to get away from that idea that the Green Party is just the environmental group, Jason. So it's a balance. I happen to believe that climate change is the biggest threat to humanity, and therefore as a politician, politics is to a certain extent about succession planning. It's about looking ahead and making decisions today that will create a better world tomorrow. So if you have this overwhelming, huge issue that you feel is paramount to everything else, then of course I'm not going to ignore it. And you'll find green politicians everywhere talking about climate change and what we have to do to get our act together to make the changes that we need to make. And again, they're not environmental changes, these are economic changes, they're social changes, they're things that we have to do individually and collectively. So I will be talking about it, but we'll also be talking about the other issues that islanders are concerned about: healthcare, education, transportation, and on, social services. That's a huge issue here. The number of people who are living in poverty on Prince Edward Island and close to the edge is... I know we had a nice announcement today for some more money, but it's late, it's too late, and it's too little. And we need to rearrange all sorts. Anyway, I'm sort of getting off here, Jason, but there's a lot of things we will be talking about. It won't just be climate change, but that will be part of the narrative for sure.
Now, you guys have seen that as a party has tended not to poke fingers at the opposite party and blame them for everything that's happened in the past. Is that intentional?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not that I can't be critical when I feel it's necessary, and I got thrown out of the house
I want to talk about that
for being critical of what I saw as farcical behavior. So it's not that I'm not able to call things out when I see something that I believe is not right. But I've also been able, and I've made it a point to give credit where credit's due. I guess I'm not, I just call it as I see it, and I don't always think about the political implications first and foremost, and that's not the only thing that's informing my behavior.
What happened there? How did that all go down?
It was the weirdest thing, Jason.
Background for anybody listening. So you were asked to leave the house for a comment that you made on the floor?
Yeah, well, it was the last day of the sitting, almost a year ago, actually. It was in December of 2017. And there's all sorts of odd conventions in every legislature. It's a very sort of, it's an odd place to live and work, let me put it that way. And many of the rules are archaic. But one of the things that we do on the very last day, it's a beautiful place to work too, by the way. Extraordinary things happen there. But on the very last day, all of the bills that have been presented, all of the new laws that have been debated in the House get presented for what's called third reading, which is when you give a sort of final stamp of approval. It doesn't lead to debate. It's really typically, it's just a formality that you go through to get the bills through third reading, it's called. And this day, we had couple of bills were receiving third reading, and I just felt that we had not done a good job of debating them on the floor of the House at second reading, the previous thing. And I had called it out at that time. I'd said, I can't remember what I'd said, but I had criticized the way that we had debated those bills, and that it's not unusual for the passage of legislation to not, in my opinion, not receive the level of scrutiny and seriousness that it deserves. I'll leave it at that. On the last day, when it was called for third reading, I stood up and said I wanted to make a statement, which you're absolutely allowed to do. It just generally, typically doesn't happen, but I was, and I sort of off the cuff talked about a number of, I had a scripted speech for part of it, and part of that scripted speech was that I felt that part of the debate process surrounding these bills was a farce, and that we had not given it the seriousness I can't remember exactly what I said. Anyway, I sat down, and I thought that would be the end of it. And by the way, I'd said farce in the House before, and many other people had. Right. And I sat down and thought, well, I've made my point. I really wanted to just let Islanders know that yes, we're passing all these bills, but I don't think that they received the attention they deserve. And then one of the ministers, it was Richard Brown, stood up and said to the Speaker, I strongly object to the language of the member opposite. And I don't remember exactly what he said. And the Speaker said, okay. And he called me and he said, would you retract your statement? And I said, no, I stand by that. I think it was farcical. I don't think that's, I think that's an accurate description, and I'm not going to withdraw it. And he said, honourable member, I ask you a second time to withdraw your remarks. And I said, I just want to be clear, are you suggesting that was what's called unparliamentary language? Certain things you can't say in the House. You can't call one of your fellow members a liar, for example. Certain things you can't do. But I thought saying the word farce was not part of that. The Speaker, on this occasion, in this context, made the decision that it was. And when he said, yes, I am, I'd say it's extremely unparliamentary. I knew then that if I stood by my remarks that second, I was being given an opportunity to withdraw the remarks, and then you just carry on as usual. But I said, no, I made a decision. It wasn't a snap decision. You'll see if you watch the tape, there's like a few seconds of, because I realized the gravity of what was going on there. Right. I thought, no, I'm going to stand by that. Right. I believe I am speaking truth, and I'm not going to back down on that. So then I was what's called named, and you get escorted from the House. It almost never happens, and it usually happens in a fit of temper or rage, or somebody says something inappropriate and they don't, But that's not what this was about. And it was, some people have suggested that I had planned that, and absolutely not. No. And there's no way that I could have anticipated that a minister would have taken objection to that.
Were you embarrassed?
I was confused. No, I wasn't embarrassed.
Okay.
I felt sorry for the Speaker, because he was put in a position of having to do something that no Speaker wants to do, which is to eject a member. I felt sorry for the Sergeant at Arms, the guy who's a good friend of mine, who had to escort me, and it was uncomfortable for everybody. Right. but not sorry enough that I was going to renege on what I thought was a matter of conscience and say something that I truly believed to be true.
And do you think that stand, well, I think that stand put you in a higher standings in the eyes of a lot of Islanders?
Well, I mean, I hadn't made all those calculations at the time,
No,
Jason. I was deadly worried that I had done the party some terrible harm.
Right.
You know, here's Peter, sort of considered to be a civil member of the House. You know, probably if you were to lay bets on who was the least likely to get thrown out of the House, I would be on that list.
Likely so.
And so that was my biggest concern, actually. It wasn't a personal thing, because I had made that decision for myself, and I was comfortable with it. But I realized the potential implications for the party pretty immediately as I was being escorted out of the House, and it was like, have I done something that's really going to be detrimental?
Right.
And I had no idea how people were going to react over time, Jason. And it was just one of those moments that, you know at the time this is profound, it's important, but you don't know what the implications of it will be. Anyway.
Now, for the party leader, Elizabeth May, what's the connection there with her? Do you have to consult with her on anything that you're doing here on the island, with any of your reforms or policies, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have no formal arrangement or agreement with the Green Party at all. I mean, Elizabeth's a close friend of mine. I've known her for decades, but we're entirely autonomous parties.
Okay.
We share values, and I've said that earlier. I mean, but that will be true of Green parties around the world. But the Green Party of PEI takes no direction whatsoever or input from the Green Party of Canada.
Now, I've had a lot of friends ask me, they knew you were coming on here, and they want to know your thoughts on how the Trudeau government is going. Trudeau himself, more so. How is he in the eyes of the world? Yeah. How's he doing?
Well, I think the bloom has gone off him, certainly nationally, and I think internationally to a certain extent as well. It's a push that we see everywhere around the world of people moving away from conventional politics and conventional politicians and looking for something different. I think Mr. Trudeau presented himself as that something different. He was relatively young, and he was talking about making some pretty profound changes in legislation, and he had a sort of youthful energy about him, charismatic, and I think people looked to him with a great deal of promise and expectations. And personally speaking, I feel very disappointed in what's happened.
I think a lot of people have.
I had high hopes that the Liberal Party, and a lot of my friends voted Liberal last time, principally because of the promise of changing the voting system, of bringing in proportional representation. And he was completely unambiguous about that. It was, this will be the last election that is held under first past the post. And a lot of people who wanted rid of Stephen Harper were looking at who's going to beat him? What? And so it was a ton of strategic voting, which is one of the horrible aspects of first past the post in a general election. And they looked to Trudeau, who was making this very clear promise, and they thought, okay, we're going to trust this guy. And I think there's a lot of disappointed people. I mean, you see that in the polls as well. There was, as with all new governments, there's a sort of honeymoon period, but I think he's past that. And I'm disappointed, very disappointed on that, and a number of other issues. And I had hoped that he would have had more personal integrity. I mean, every leader has their advisors, but it's up to you whether or not you accept the advice that they give you. And you would hope that at a certain point in time you have to take responsibility for as a leader for the decisions you make, regardless of the advice you're getting.
Yeah, you mentioned the advisors there. So how much is it when a person is a prime minister or premier, how much influence do they accept from outside sources? Do they confer with the rest of their caucus and really get to understand it, or are they kind of on a little dictatorship and are they able to just say whatever whim that that passes their mind, or are they able to cast it off and do whatever they want?
I think it's different for everybody. The pattern, though, Jason, is certainly in Canadian politics, because of the way things are structured, is for more and more power and influence to be centered in well, federally it's the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, or the Premier's office in a province. Some leaders are more consensual and will look for advice from a broad range of people. Others are very much in a closed box with a tiny number of advisors. I don't know exactly where Trudeau falls on that spectrum. And some leaders don't take kindly to advice of any kind from anybody. So I think there's a wide variety of styles of leadership. It's been my choice to seek wide input on decisions that are made. I don't know if I call them advisors. I mean, my wife is an advisor. When I go to people's houses, I treat what I hear there as advice. So I don't know, like, at what point somebody is an official advisor, you know. Right. So I take my points of reference from all kinds of different places. But making decisions in politics is tough. It's tough. And I think we talked a little bit earlier about the challenges of governance. And, you know, you have to take into account short-term implications, medium-term, long-term, ultimate implications of the decisions you make. You have to look at the economic aspects of it, the social aspects of it, the environmental aspects of every decision you make, and the political aspects. You know, you can't ignore that part of it. So some people, those political, that part of the formula outweighs everything else, and they will make decisions that are principally, not solely, but principally designed to try and secure their election or re-election in the next round of elections.
Professional politicians.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way, I don't think. I think that, of course, you can't ignore that. You can't come in and bring in a whole bunch of unpopular policies that people are not going to support. I mean, hopefully you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't be elected. I mean, you hope that the platform you run on is the platform that you implement when you're. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works. Of course, and we were just talking about Trudeau's. You know, that's only one of several disappointments in my mind. The discrepancies between what was promised in the platform and the reality of governance. And again, to a certain extent, I understand that, and I can forgive little deviations, but these are not little deviations. These are 180-degree turns. And I don't mean to pick on Mr. Trudeau. I mean, you can look at our own provincial government here and say something similar. So I would hope that a government of integrity, an ethical government, would implement the policies that they ran on because they were voted in to do that. But that they would do it in a manner that would be consistent with their own values of their party. And yeah, that they wouldn't. Well, let me put it this way: that politicians should say what they're going to do, and then they should do what they say. Right. I mean, it's actually not that complicated.
It's not that complicated.
But somehow it is.
And that's the thing. People come and knock on your door. They tell you whatever you want to hear. Yeah. And people are so sick of it. Yeah. People are so sick of year after year going through this whole election process and hearing everything that each candidate has to say, and then as soon as they get in the office, boom, more taxes. That's what it seems like. It's just more taxes. Things get worse by degrees. Like I say, our hospitals are in need of more services, and the whole island and a whole breadth of different things. Yeah. But not just provincially, but nationally. So the feeling I get from a lot of people my age, my friends, is a lot of them have even given up hope, and they don't even vote. They just said, like, whoever gets in there, they're in it for themselves, and we don't care who gets in. It's just a system. You know, it's playing itself out, and it's everybody for themselves. Then you come up, and people kind of go, is this guy different? Is he really telling me the truth this time? You know, I think that's what they're really looking at you and focusing on, is does this guy, does he have the integrity to lead and take us in a new direction? Because I think they've been so let down by so many people for so many years, they don't know where to go. Nobody knows where to go, or even if they should vote. Is it going to make a difference? You know, what do you think of that? Do you get some of that out there?
No, I appreciate what you just said, Jason, and it's not easy. Leadership is not for the faint of heart. Governing is complicated, but I think there's a couple of things. I think you don't make extravagant promises that you know you cannot keep.
Right.
I think that's the first thing. So you will not see in the Green Party platform coming into the next election, we're going to slash your taxes and we're going to put way more money into healthcare and education and whatever else. Because that's not responsible government.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is make realistic promises that are costed and that you know that you can keep. And trust people. I think this is the second aspect, Jason. Trust people that you can have an honest conversation with them and say, look, yeah, you know, things are tough, and we're going to have to make these difficult choices. Although, I mean, we have a big surplus, you know, $75 million surplus just announced 2 days ago. So there's money to be spent.
Right.
If that's what you want, maybe we can cut taxes. I mean, there's all sorts of permutations of how you spend that money, or how you rearrange the finances of the province, and many choices to be made, difficult choices. But I can tell you that it will be two things. It will be an honest conversation with Islanders saying, let's talk about this, whether that's climate change and what we need to do to fix that, or the struggles that we're having in our healthcare system to provide the services that people absolutely deserve, whether that's mental health services or just local services, getting access to a doctor in your own community. Those are absolutely important things that we need to talk about, but that's going to cost money. So where are we going to get that money from? And not promise the world. Have those difficult conversations and make realistic promises and stand by those promises in action when you're elected.
And you think that's something that can be done?
Oh, absolutely. It was done. It has been done in the past. We've, and not that there were, you know, virtuous politicians, right, you know, forever until recently, and not at all. I mean, politics has, you know, been peppered with all sorts of rascals for a very long time. But there's nothing inherent in the system of politics or politics in itself that makes it inherently untruthful or, you know, deceptive or manipulative. It doesn't have to be like that at all.
Well, when we see some of the scandals over the years, the senators who take way too, well, presumably you're spending way too much out of the coffers, and I guess they're allowed to. They have a budget that they're allowed to spend from, but then it goes beyond that. Mike Duffy, I mean, he really hurt the island and himself and the whole process of the Senate. That's when people get so disheartened by the whole system, by the whole government system, and that what they see is people who just want to get ahead, who just want to fill their pockets as much as they can, and it's been example after example over the last few years, especially. And like I say, I think the Green Party is coming ahead because of that reason, that they're looking for something different, that people are hungry for a change, a real change, like what we're talking about here. And obviously, if this report is accurate and we need to do something by 2030, someone's going to have to do something. And who's going to do it? There's still no change. We heard this report a few weeks ago. There hasn't been any changes. And who's going to implement that? And I guess it's going to have to be everybody, like you said, and everybody's going to have to take a little bite and do their part in order to stabilize the whole system. And you think it's possible?
Absolutely. It comes back to my faith in humanity, that people are instinctively kind and generous and want to look after each other. I absolutely believe that. And you basically what you said is that people have lost faith in politicians. And to a certain extent, I mean, I can understand that. Of course, you can point to all sorts of individuals who have smeared the profession of. I mean, politics used to be a place of nobility, and it was considered to be the highest calling in your community. But like anything else, I mean, I knew dentists who were scoundrels. I know teachers who were scoundrels. I know financial advisors who were scoundrels. I mean, politics is not exempt from that. The difference being that people have a front row to what's going on in politics, particularly here on the island. And there's a lot of money at stake. You know, the public purse is a big fat purse.
Oh, yeah.
And you need people in there in whom you can trust. I don't want to cast aspersions on all the politicians who've come before us. There are really good people there now, in all parties. There are really good civil servants, enormously talented civil service here on Prince Edward Island. There are good people, and it's important that we don't lose faith in the system itself. Yes, there are some bad apples in there, Jason, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that politics is rotten to the core itself. It's not. There are good people trying to do the right thing. And I still have hope, Jason, that we can turn this around both locally and globally.
I think there's always hope. Hope springs eternal, right? I think that the problem is trying to change people's minds of what they would do next. An example, 15 years ago, I went out west to find work. I ran into a group of guys who were electricians. They were going to go look for work on the oil fields out in Alberta, and we were sitting around drinking one night. We were all together, putting out resumes and all that. And the nighttime, we got back to the bar at the same hotel, and I brought it up one night. I just said, "Isn't it a shame?" I said something to this effect, that what we're doing is burning oil. You know, we're looking for jobs that have extracting the oil at its core. That's what we're looking for. And all the guys there must have been 5 other guys. At the same time, they all put their heads down and went, "Oh yeah." There was a collective sigh. That
Interesting.
It was. I didn't expect that from all the guys, but they all felt a sort of guilt in that the jobs that they were looking to do was going to help in the burning of fossil fuels. So I think that's pervasive, probably out there amongst a lot of guys who are working in that field, that they don't necessarily enjoy what they're doing, but they need the money. They need the money. They have to pay their bills. They've got kids, that sort of thing. And it's sort of this enslavement to a system that they don't know how to get out of. And like you say, I know you're saying that these green alternatives will produce more jobs, but people have to see that. People have to see that. It has to be right there for them to acknowledge and to hear the stories of other people who are working in that industry, who are actually thriving. Once that starts to happen, I think the shift will be sudden. If they could make a living close to what they make now, look after their families, and do something for the environment, I think they would be more than happy to do something like that if they saw the value in it and if it was immediate. But it doesn't seem, you can hardly get a green car here on the island. The only one I could find is the Nissan Leaf. I took a Nissan Leaf for a test drive last year. Not a bad car, it was pretty good. And the price was, I think it was like $50,000 for a little sedan. You could barely fit 2 people into the back. And that was the only option. I looked around at all the other dealerships, and there was no other fully electric car on the island. So something has to change with the business model. And how is that? I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't.
Yeah.
If the option isn't there for people to buy an affordable level, not a $50,000 car, people are just they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the easier aspects of what you just said there, Jason, to deal with, and that's partly the economies of scale. Electric cars are still relatively new on the scene. The technology is improving all the time, but for every electric car that we're building what, 100. I don't know what the figures are.
Yeah.
Yes, at least in North America, the ratios are much better in parts of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're only building a small number of something, the unit costs are always more. So there's a good economic reason why they're not as affordable as they could be. Mm-hmm. Also, I'll leave that at that. But I want to go back to what you said at the very beginning about you and the 5 guys sitting around the bar table with a beer feeling guilty. Mm. And I think one of the things that we have lost that is most precious in this world is a sense of community, a sense that we're all in this together.
Right.
And when you lose that, it becomes possible, not comfortable, and you clearly said that because all of you felt the same way. It becomes possible to sort of put aside the collective responsibility of which we are all a part, and just to take care of yourself and your family and justify what you're doing by saying, okay, well, I have to provide for my family as you do, or yourself. I don't know if they all have families or not, but it doesn't matter. The idea that we have an individual life that we live, but we're all part of a collective whole, and somehow we have lost those connections. That community has not completely unraveled, but it's a lot less strong than it used to be. People used to live in small communities, in villages, generally rurally. Yeah. You wouldn't travel very much. It was a real sense of, I belong here, and everybody who lives here, I feel connected to them, and what I do is going to influence them and impact them, and vice versa. And so that sense of shared responsibility was far stronger. We've lost that. We live in our detached houses, we get in our vehicles, we drive to work. I mean, I'm generalizing, of course, it's different for everybody, but that sense of the collective well-being has been eroded quite substantially, and that to me is a real sadness and a part of the problem here, because we know deep down, people know that we are responsible to each other. Like, what I do does affect you. It may not be immediately apparent, Jason, but the choices I make in my life do impact you and do impact your children. And people know that, but it's easy to ignore. It's comfortable to ignore it. But when it's brought forward and you say, you know what, we are all in this together. We need to recognize the shared responsibility that we have. And let's not abandon the fact that we indeed live individual lives. I'm an individual, you're an individual, but we are connected, sometimes in very obvious ways, sometimes in more subtle ways, sometimes in ways that we can't understand or see. And we need to rebuild those connections and honor those connections and recognize the community that we live in. And our community is humanity on this planet.
Do you have an idea how we could do that? I was thinking the same thing. How there's hardly any men's groups anymore that there used to be. I know there's talks of people in the 40s and 50s years talks of that there was a lot of men's groups. There were a lot of women's groups who got together, and that has slowly because of the 2 people in the family, it's suggested as a theory of why this is decayed, is that both parents have to go out and make a living, and it's harder for people to go to work, do their 8 or whatever, 12 hours and come back home. They don't have time to get into these social groups anymore that they used to. So how would we get back to anything?
I mean, there's no, I'd be lying if I was to answer that question with confidence and assuredness and a simple answer, Jason, because there's a million ways that we can individually fix that. In stopping and speaking to people and making those connections one-on-one. And maybe that's partly why door-to-door is something that really appeals to me, because you're building a community there. Right. It's in how we respect each other, how we treat each other, how we look after each other, care for each other. And that might sound all a little bit soppy to some people, but it's real.
I think so. The older I get, the more I see the core values going back to what we believe in. I think, I was raised in the 80s, right? So everything was, get ahead, feel free.
Still the way it is, Jason.
Pretty much, yeah. Get ahead and just have as much fun as you possibly can right now. Not to say screw anyone over, but just go out and feel free to do whatever you want. Now I think there's definitely a more conservative feel coming back. I think people are starting to reach out and say, oh, what's really important here? Yeah, like you said, they're searching for something. They want this feeling of community that's been lost for quite a while. And something else that I've seen lately that is new to our culture is what we said earlier about the online attacks. You said yourself that what people have said about you, and you have to brush it off. Probably a lot from just people hiding behind a computer and just saying whatever they want, whenever they want, without consequence. And this is a whole new medium that we're dealing with in our age. We saw, cyberbullying and all those sorts of things over the years. So we're dealing with a whole lot of different issues at one time that I don't think humanity has ever really been faced with before. And to be a politician at this time is especially challenging, I think, for you.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at the history of Homo sapiens living on the planet, for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, very little change from one generation to another. The life that you would lead would mimic the life that your parents would lead and of their parents. Very, very little change. And it's only in the sort of a blink of a geological eye, in the last little bit, where things have picked up. And it was the Industrial Revolution. It was that really got things moving. And in our lifetime, the world will be unrecognizable by the time when I die from what it was when I was born. That rate of change, that pace of transformation, and the sort of the widespread, I mean, it's everywhere and it's in everything. That is a new reality for humanity. And I'm not sure that we have the genetic makeup to cope with that. I'm not sure that we understand all of the changes and what impact they're going to have on us emotionally, intellectually, socially. And I fear for a society that is so disconnected from each other. We spend so much time on our devices now and not in community with other human beings.
Right.
I have no idea what the outcome of that will be, but instinctively, I don't feel comfortable about it. I don't feel easy about that. It's a big experiment that we're going through, but it's also we've lost to a certain extent, to a huge extent, because so many of us now live in cities. 80% of the world's population now live in urban centers. We've lost that connection not only with each other but with the natural world. And you tell people that that the oceans are dying, or that the atmosphere. I mean, of course, we can see clouds and we see the sun and we see stars and the moon and things, but to a large extent, people have lost touch with the earth, literally with the earth, and I think that's part of the problem why we are able to abuse our planet as we have over the last little while. It doesn't seem as connected as it was when 70% of the people who lived were involved in agriculture or were literally had their hands in the soil.
There's nothing sacred about it.
Absolutely not. And I mean that's a real sadness, but I think it's part of the problem why we can carry on living. We live in these isolated chambers, imagining that everything is comfortable and warm and bright and sunny, and out there that's not the case.
As you go door to door, as you get out there among the people, do you feel that they are resonating with you, that they really want your attention, that they're looking up to you to provide a better future? Maybe not. Maybe you don't get that sense at all from people. But are there some people who are sort of looking at you to make a big change?
Yeah. There absolutely are, Jason, and that's a heavy responsibility to bear. And I think people like to be led. They like to be inspired by somebody or something. And that, again, that's not what I set out on this road of politics to do, to be an inspirational leader, if indeed I am that. In some people's eyes I am, but in many people's eyes I'm a pain. But yeah, I think there's an element of that, Jason, that people are looking for leadership that is pointing in a slightly different direction from the conventional the conventional lines that we've been taking for so long.
Well, you're a hugger.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
You hug everybody.
Yeah, but you know what? That's interesting. I've even that, which is a very natural thing for me. I remember as a little boy, well, not a little boy, maybe 15, 18 years old or something. I was at a friend's house and my dad picked me up, and I hadn't seen my dad for a little while. He came in and gave me a big hug, and I remember my friend afterwards saying, "God, your dad hugs you. What's that?" And clearly that was so. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a very tactile, loving family, and again, I'm very. I don't underestimate the importance of that. Mm. So yeah, I love to hug people, but I'm uncomfortable now with the Me Too movement and the things that are happening. I have to be so careful.
Good point. Yeah,
and that really saddens me because I do. I want to. I want to. Hugging is it's a way of. It's a trust issue, you know. Mm-hmm. If you feel you can hug somebody and do it with, with nothing but good intentions in your heart, this is something very reassuring and lovely about that.
So you're
even that's been tainted. Always. Yeah. Always a hugger.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was just a way of communicating with your.
No, I have to be careful, and I probably do it less now than I did, Jason, because I that. Again, it's sort of it's been tainted, and that's and that's the reality of life, and you have to adjust to that.
Yeah, that is a sad thing going on here with it's sort of getting creeping into every aspect of life, and people getting fired.
Yeah, and I should be clear. I mean, the Me Too movement is something that I strongly support.
Sure,
I mean, I look at what some women have had to deal, and men, by the way, but principally women, and I'm horrified by that. That part of our world just absolutely disgusts me, and I hate it. So I don't want you to be left with the impression, or anybody listening, that I'm somehow blaming the Me Too movement for losing my opportunities to hug people. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that there's a side to that which is limited in my spontaneity and my sort of.
Now, a lot of people are talking about there's a split into the tribalism, and maybe it's saying that maybe the Me Too movement could be a part of that, reflective of that. Do you start to see that in Canada? More so in the United States, I guess. Whites against blacks, the Me Too movement, the LGBT community, and everybody seemed to be pointing fingers at the other one. Worse in the States, I would imagine, than it is in Canada. Have you felt any of those issues, or?
Humanity is really great at putting up barriers between us. You're white, I'm black, I'm gay, you're straight, I'm British, you're South American, and on and on and on and on. We're really great at dividing ourselves into groups. What we're less good at is recognizing the incredible number of ways that we are connected to each other, and that we are not different, that we share so much. And yes, there's tribalism, whether it's in politics or whether it's in religion or whether it's in gender or sexuality or in all sorts of ways. But I think, and I hope, there's a growing realization that we have far more in common with our fellow human beings and the rest of creation, by the way, than we have differences. And I much prefer to look at the commonalities that exist rather than to magnify the differences that exist between us.
How do people get involved with the Greens?
There's all kinds of ways. We have a website that's very accessible, and if people want to join, I'm not doing this I didn't agree to do this as a political broadcast on behalf of the Green Party, but I appreciate the question.
Right.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing. I think it's www.greenparty.pe or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, if you Google Green Party PEI, you'll come across the website, and you can become a member. You can become a donor. If you so wish, you can consider running as a candidate. You can bring forward policy ideas. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that you can get involved with the party.
And do you see a tendency of more younger people? Is there a certain demographic that are coming to you? Or?
Yeah, I think I've never actually gone out and looked at the stats on this, Jason, but I think we probably have, generally speaking, a younger membership than the other parties here on the island, but I don't know that for sure. And one would imagine that that would be the case. You know, the Green Party is talking about long-term solutions. We're very concerned about the world that the youth living today are going to grow up in, and that's, as I mentioned a couple of times now, that's what motivated me, and that's not unusual for people within the Green Party, that's their motivation. So that sort of long-term thinking, I think, appeals to young people, and also they're going to inherit the messes that we've created, the social messes, the economic mess that we're relieving for them, and of course all of the environmental problems. So a party that says, yeah, we're going to have to do something about it, and we better do something about it now, I would imagine is appealing to a lot of young people. Are
there any forums, or is there any open discussions that are going? There are?
Yeah, we have things called green drinks or chat locals, or a number of things. You could actually, on Facebook, I know that this is Facebook Live right now, the Green Party PEI has a Facebook page, and on there you get listed all of the events. We have a couple of those events, which are very informal. Just show up. I go to most of them, not all of them, but I mean there will always be members of the party there. They might Hannah Bell might be there, or Lynn Lund, the deputy leader, or some of the other nominated candidates might be around.
And you don't have to be a party member.
No, not at all. You just come and say, well, okay, well, what's this Green Party? Just get a sense of who we are as a group, because I mean. Yes, there was a time when the Green Party was synonymous with Peter Bevan-Baker, but that's not the case anymore. We're a very diverse group of people now. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that I feel very comfortable around. I feel supported by all of the people in the party. It doesn't, that people have this idea that politics has to be this nasty, grabbing, undercutting, kneecapping sort of space to live and work. And I'm very proud of the culture that we've been creating in the Island Green Party here, where people are truly, and it's not a superficial thing, people are truly supportive of each other, and it feels like a community, actually. Which, if we can't do it with our own party, then how can we possibly imagine that we can bring that to a province or a country? So yeah, there's a real sense of something good and important happening, and I'm very proud of that.
What do you think is going on here with the PCs locally? Apparently they're saying that the party itself is conflicted. They don't have a certain amount of unity that they need to forge ahead. Being on the inside of government, I would imagine you're privy to things that most of us don't hear. Is there a fracture in the PC?
Yeah, but that's not new, Jason. That's been present for a long time, and I sincerely say that saddens me. I mean, some of the people in the PC caucus are my friends, and I don't like to see anybody, and I absolutely mean this genuinely, I don't like to see anybody suffering. Politics lends itself to people with strong opinions and sometimes large ambition. And that's a dangerous combination. I'm not suggesting that this is peculiar or only present in the PC party. Not at all. It's everywhere in politics. But you have to manage that really carefully. You have to, and perhaps the most complex and demanding part of the job of leader of a party is to try and sort of keep everybody together and pointed in the same direction without being dictatorial, to provide a space where people can feel that their opinions are heard, that they feel part of a larger collective, but that larger collective is pointing together, unified in the same direction. That's incredibly difficult. It takes up a huge amount of my time and energy. And it's not just me as leader. I mean, there are other people in the party who, the whole party as a unit is trying to do that, but you have special responsibilities as a leader. Excuse me. So yeah, absolutely. There are problems in all political parties, and the PCs provincially here are no different from that. And I really wish them well. I hope they can fix that.
So are you like a manager of your party? If somebody has a problem with somebody else, they don't like what they said, do they come to you and try to have a grievance settled?
That's a position I try to not get myself in, Jason. That's a tough one. Now, I learned when I was a dentist, a much smaller organization, of course. You know, there were 5 or 6 of us in the office. But I did spend a lot of time fostering good relations with my staff and making sure that we were all supportive of each other. And that was an enormously important part of the happy dentist thing I was talking about earlier. Unless you have those solid, supportive, loving relationships, I'll use the word loving relationships, and I did with all my staff, then your organization is not as good as it could be. So the work that I put in my dental office, and it's a huge amount of work. You can't just develop those trusting, loving relationships easily or quickly. It takes work, and it takes an investment of time and effort. And that's true perhaps even more so in an institution like a political party. So I'm always speaking to the members, to the other candidates, to the, you know, and on a one-on-one level. Sometimes we had a group conference on the weekend, an all-day event where all of the candidates were there, and that's the first time that all of the nominated candidates have been together in a room. So it was as much a team-building exercise as it was an educational exercise on the realities of life as an MLA and all of the other things that we talked about. And so making time to build those relationships and the trust that comes from that, that's a big part of my job. But I consider that perhaps the most valuable investment of my time and energy, to try and create or to be part of an institution that has a really solid core of unity and community about it.
And do you get a sense that people, once they join the party and that they're working towards a common goal, that they actually feel better about themselves, about what they're doing, that their life is going in a certain direction, that for the positive more so than if they weren't a part of you guys?
Yeah, I think that's true for some people, Jason. I mean, some people join and it's just not for them, and you know they leave, and that's fine too. I can think of, as you introduced that question, I can think of a number of people who've been quite touched by the family or the community that they have found in the Green Party. Some of them express that very overtly, and some don't. But yeah, I think for some people that's absolutely true. Yeah.
And there's some people who'd be cautious and just stand back on the sidelines and watch what's happening. Make sure these guys are for real.
I mean, and that's the beauty of humanity. We're all different, and so in every single way, none of the two of us are the same.
Yeah.
And what works for some people and what attracts some people is not going to work for others. So, but I mean, that's the beauty, and that's part of the skill of politics, is because we're dealing with human beings and choices and making collective decisions, and you have to have as many people as you can come to a consensus on an issue, and you do that by building relationships. I believe, not by hammering, you know, a particular ethic or particular creed or something into it.
I might put you on the spot a little bit, but in the next election, do you foresee certain districts where you say, yes, we're going to win that? You do?
I do.
Wow.
I do.
Yeah.
And that's based partly on the poll numbers that I see. It's based partly on the individual talents of certain candidates that have been nominated in our party. But you know what? I say this to all the people who are seriously considering a candidacy for the Green Party. You better understand that there's the distinct possibility you might actually win this, and your life will change.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that we can win every. Well, I guess that's plausible, or at least possible. But I can see areas where, for a number of reasons, that the Greens have a really, really good chance of winning more seats. And you know, if you ask me how many, I have no idea, Jason.
Right. But for sure, you foresee more seats being filled.
Something's going to happen. I mean, I think unless there's a massive blow up, you know, I can't imagine how that would happen.
Now, in order for you to maintain the leadership of the party, do you have to win your seats in your?
No, we have a mechanism in the party that after every election there's a leadership review. I think it's every 2 years actually, even if there isn't an election. But after an election there's a leadership review within 6 months. I can't remember the wording, unless we form government or something like that. And that would seem like a joke at the time, but maybe not so much now. So if after this election I am unelected, but there are still Green members in the House, then I think I would voluntarily step down. That would be the only reasonable thing to do, sensible thing to do. I hope that's not the case, Jason. But you know, politics is a strange place to live and work, and you never know. So I'm certainly not taking anything for granted.
Right.
I do a ton of work in my constituents, in my district. You know, locally, you just have to. That's where you win the trust and respect and ultimately votes of your neighbours and friends.
So you have no idea when the rate is going to be dropped and when the next election is going to be?
No, I mean, I've given up guessing. There was a time when I spent a lot of time and effort, and the party spent a lot of time and effort trying to read the tea leaves and all of the things that were happening. And then we got it wrong like 2 or 3 times. It looked like there was an imminent election call coming, and it never happened. So I pretty well stopped that. You know, we just focus on our internal party stuff, and we're as ready now as we'll ever be, because we were ready for those potential writ drops that never arrived. So yeah, we're good. We're good.
Good. It's going to be interesting.
It will be interesting.
And what do you think of the what happened here in Nova Scotia in the last election?
New Brunswick.
Sorry. Yeah. That's kind of an really interesting dynamic. They're trying to get the confidence of the Greens to try to pull them into. How would that affect things? How would it affect the Green Party over there if they were? Would they have to amalgamate into?
No, I mean there are lots of arrangements, and it's almost a unique situation that they have in New Brunswick now. The math of all of the various permutations and combinations of the parties that are in the House there make it challenging to have a stable government. And the Greens, actually there's news on that as I was driving to your house this afternoon in my hybrid car, by the way, not electric, but I'm halfway there. Actually there's no electric car that would sort of, none that's affordable to me, that would allow me to live, to be in Surrey tomorrow and Summerside the day after, or that same day sometimes. Anyway, I got off track there. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, I said I drove here. Oh my God, I've totally lost track.
The news that you just.
Oh yeah, New Brunswick. The Gallant government lost the confidence of the House. The Greens voted for the throne speech. That's how you get the confidence of the House. You present a plan, and then if enough members of the House support it, a majority of the House, you go ahead and you implement that plan. So their throne speech, their plan was presented. The Liberals, the Greens said, okay, we can support that. I'm sure they had. I didn't read or watch any of the debate, but I would imagine they would have had some concerns with aspects of it. But overall, they decided that they would support it, but the Conservatives voted against it, as did the People's Alliance. So there was one more vote against than there was in favour. So the Gallant government has now fallen. That just happened this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
So 2 choices then. Gallant could call an election, or the leader of the Conservative Party can be given an opportunity to get the confidence of the House. So now that's what's going to happen. It would have been very bad politics for Mr. Gallant to call an election a few weeks after. It's just the expense, the palaver, all of that. So the leader of the Conservatives will now be given an opportunity to present their throne speech, and if enough members of the House, and maybe they will put some things in there that will tip the Greens. I think the People's Alliance have suggested that they will support the Conservatives, although I guess that will depend on the substance of the throne speech.
So they just need a vote from the Green. They don't need to join.
No. And most countries, we haven't talked at all about electoral systems and coalition governments and minority governments and majority governments and all of that stuff. But under the first past the post system, unless a party receives a majority of the seats, then you have to have a coalition of one or more parties to create a majority of people in the House to get, because more than 50% of House members have to vote for anything in order for it to pass. And that's where collaboration becomes possible in our system. Unfortunately, the combative nature and the I could get down in the weeds here about the instability of minority governments in first past the post versus the relative and actually very, very stable minority governments that are created in a proportional representation system. That's probably too wonky for a webcast like this. Anyway, there's a potential in New Brunswick for those parties to work together. And there's no reason under the sun that the Liberals and Conservatives couldn't work together. You know, philosophically,
right.
At least here on PEI, it's difficult to find any distinction between, I mean, there's some subtle things there, but really, and they both have governed from the centre to a large extent if you look back at the bills that are passed or the platforms that were presented. So there's no reason why the Liberals and Tories couldn't get together and work together, but there's such embedded hostility there that and partisanship that I you know, that's not, and that's a sad thing about politics, of course, is it tends to be extremely tribal with a capital T. But the Conservatives there, they'll not likely get the support of the Liberals, but if they can produce a throne speech that has some appealing factors for the Greens and for the People's Alliance, then maybe they'll be off to the races and they can form a government and work issue by issue and maintaining confidence in the House.
The People's Alliance, what is that?
Oh my gosh, I don't know enough about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of the left-right split of political parties or describing parties that way. That's a very old-fashioned way of looking at things. But the People's Alliance is a populist right-wing party. Okay. Their sort of central issue, and I don't want to speak too much because I'm sort of relatively ignorant on that, Jason, but New Brunswick is an officially bilingual province, and they have concerns with the amount of resources that are required in order to provide services in French to the whole province. So that's a sort of their defining issue, if you like. But I mean, there's far more to them than that, and I hope I haven't done them a disservice in that, misrepresented them in that description. But that's where they are, and they have a sort of more natural alliance with the Conservative Party than they probably would with the Liberals. Okay,
so it's sort of like a Quebecois.
Yeah, I don't think they're a separatist party as such. No, I don't know enough about it to sort of say any more on that, Jason.
Sure. That's 2 hours.
You're kidding.
That's 2 hours.
Gosh.
So I guess we better wrap it up. It's been fun.
It's
really good. My first podcast, and I'm so happy and honored that you came and spent this time.
It was a real pleasure, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, when you have a length of time like this, you can really, get down to some profound stuff, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I hope you can come back and do it again.
I hope so too.
So I just want to let everybody know that this is a new podcast. I'm going to try and do a weekly episode.
Okay.
This content will be uploaded on the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is called Talk Matters PEI, and I actually have an Outlook address that if anybody out there wants to get in touch with me, it's talkmatterspei@outlook.com. So I hope to keep on trucking with this. And
I wish you all the success in the world with this, Jason.
Yeah, and I'm with you, with your party.
You're a very comfortable conversationalist. You led that beautifully. It's great.
Good. I'm a little more nervous than I hope I let on, but anyway.
I've never
First
noticed.
time. Oh, so good. Well, anyway, thanks very much, and